The prenatal tea was supposed to help her baby grow strong and healthy. Rebecca Matthews drank it religiously every morning at 8:30, just like her husband's pharmaceutical colleague recommended. But what Rebecca didn't know was that someone was adding a little extra ingredient to her tea, something that would kill her unborn child and make it look like a tragic but natural pregnancy complication. The person she trusted most was planning her murder for $2 million in insurance money, and his mistress was the one slowly poisoning her tea, one morning at a time. But there was someone else watching, someone Rebecca thought was just her helpful new housekeeper. What Rebecca didn't know was that Grace wasn't actually a maid at all. She was an undercover detective, and she'd been documenting everything. Every poisoning attempt, every lie, every calculated step toward murder. This is the true story of how prenatal tea became a weapon, how a mistress became an attempted killer, and how one woman's fight for survival exposed a serial murderer who had been eliminating women for nearly 2 decades. Stay with me, because this story will shock you, inspire you, and remind you that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones planning our destruction. The china cup shattered against the marble floor, liquid spread across the pristine white surface like spilled blood. The prenatal tea was supposed to help the baby. Instead, it was killing us both. Rebecca Matthews felt the world tilt. Her 7-month pregnant belly tightened as darkness crept into her vision. The kitchen, with its spotless countertops and morning sunlight streaming through bay windows, blurred into meaningless shapes. "Mrs. Matthews," Grace's voice cut through the fog. "Stay with me." The live-in housekeeper dropped to her knees beside Becca. Grace Sullivan had only worked for them 3 weeks, but her hands moved with surprising confidence. She checked Becca's pulse while reaching for her phone. "911, I need an ambulance at 47 Oak Ridge Drive. Pregnant woman, 32 years old, unconscious, 7 months along, possible poisoning." Becca's phone buzzed against the floor. Appointment reminders, grocery lists, the mundane notifications of a life about to shatter completely. Grace pressed her fingers against Becca's wrist. "Can you hear me? The baby's moving. That's good. That's very good." The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. Becca's consciousness floated somewhere between panic and peace. The baby kicked weakly against her ribs. "Hold on, little one," she whispered. "Just hold on." David's BMW screeched into the driveway as paramedics burst through the front door. Her husband of 8 years ran into the kitchen, still wearing his expensive suit from his early business meeting. "What happened? Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" Grace stepped back as EMTs took over. "She collapsed after drinking her morning prenatal tea. Same routine every day at 8:30. "The tea," David's voice cracked. "But she's been drinking that for months." One paramedic started an IV line, while another checked the baby's heartbeat with a portable monitor. The sound filled the kitchen, fast but strong, fighting. "Blood pressure dropping," the first EMT said. "Let's move." They lifted Becca onto the stretcher. The world became a blur of ceiling tiles and fluorescent lights. David held her hand as they wheeled her toward the ambulance. "Everything will be fine," he said. "You're strong. The baby's strong." But his palm was sweating. His eyes wouldn't meet hers. At Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Patricia Hendricks took charge immediately. The OB-GYN had delivered hundreds of babies over 25 years. Her gray hair was pulled into a no-nonsense bun. Her hands were steady as she examined Becca. "When did you last eat, Doctor?" Hendricks asked. "Toast this morning, around 8:15, then the prenatal tea at 8:30, same every day." "What's in this tea?" "Red raspberry leaf, nettle, chamomile. It's supposed to help with labor preparation." Dr. Hendricks made notes. "Any nausea, dizziness, changes in the baby's movements?" Becca thought back. "The baby's been quieter this week. I thought maybe she was just getting ready to drop. First pregnancies take longer." "Right. Sometimes." Dr. Hendricks' expression remained neutral. "We need blood work immediately. Full toxicology panel." David paced beside the bed. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the linoleum floor. Click, click, click. The sound drove into Becca's skull like tiny hammers. "Could you please stop?" she asked. He froze. "Sorry, I'm just worried." Grace appeared in the doorway. She'd followed the ambulance to the hospital. Something about her presence felt reassuring. Competent. Safe. The tea canister, Grace said quietly. I brought it. Thought the doctors might need it. Dr. Hendricks examined the metal tin. She opened it carefully and sniffed. Her expression changed. This doesn't smell right. Raspberry leaf has a distinct aroma. This is different. 2 hours later, Dr. Hendricks returned with lab results. Her face was grave. Mrs. Matthews, your blood shows elevated levels of pennyroyal and tansy. These are herbs that can cause miscarriage and organ failure. The room went silent except for the steady beep of monitors. That's impossible, David said. She buys organic tea from the health food store. Someone added these herbs to her regular tea. The concentrations are precise, too precise to be accidental. Becca's world stopped. Someone did this on purpose. Yes, the baby's heart rate is irregular. We need to monitor you both constantly. Any more exposure could be fatal. David sank into the bedside chair. Who would do this? Why? Grace stepped forward. Her voice was calm but authoritative. Detective Morrison, this is Grace Sullivan. We need you here immediately. She hung up and turned to Becca. Mrs. Matthews, I need to tell you something. I'm not actually your housekeeper. Becca stared at her. Nothing made sense anymore. I'm Detective Sullivan with the Metro Police. I was assigned to your case 3 weeks ago after we received an anonymous tip about threats against your life. What? David stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. You're a cop. Yes, I've been documenting everything. Your routines. Who has access to your home? Who knew about your pregnancy habits? Grace pulled out a small recorder. Someone has been systematically poisoning your prenatal tea. The herbs were added gradually over several weeks. Enough to cause harm without immediate suspicion. Becca felt the baby kick. Weak but persistent. My baby. Is my baby going to be okay? Dr. Hendricks checked the monitor. The heart rate is stabilizing, but we need to move you to a secure room immediately. If someone tried once, they'll try again, Grace finished. The poisoning was meant to look like pregnancy complications. Late-term miscarriage. Tragic but natural. David's face had gone white. This is insane. Who would want to hurt Becca? Grace studied his expression carefully. That's what we're going to find out. But first, Mrs. Matthews needs complete security. As they moved Becca to the private maternity wing, she caught Grace's reflection in the elevator's polished steel doors. The woman's eyes were sharp, alert, professional. You've been watching us for 3 weeks, Becca asked. Yes, someone wanted you dead. Mrs. Matthews, they were very patient about it. The elevator doors opened. Becca's new world awaited. A world where her morning tea was a weapon, where her husband paced like a trapped animal, where her housekeeper was actually her protector. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Fight, Becca whispered to her daughter. We're going to fight. The secure room felt like a prison. 2 security guards stood outside. Cameras monitored every corner. Becca lay in the hospital bed watching her world dissolve through the reinforced window. I'm not paranoid. Someone really is trying to kill my baby. The words came out as a statement, not a question, not a plea for reassurance, a fact that burned in her chest like acid. Grace sat beside her bed reviewing files, no longer pretending to be a housekeeper. She wore simple clothes that couldn't hide her alertness. Her hair was pulled back severely. Her weapon was visible beneath her jacket. The anonymous tip came from someone who works with pharmaceuticals, Grace said. Someone noticed missing inventory, herbs that shouldn't be available to the general public. David hadn't left her side since the revelation. He held her hand constantly, too constantly. His grip felt desperate rather than comforting. I still can't believe someone would do this to you, he said. To us. But something in his voice felt wrong, like he was reading from a script he'd rehearsed. Dr. Hendricks entered with more test results. The baby's responding well to monitoring. Heart rate is improving. But Mrs. Matthews, these herbs were administered in very specific doses. What does that mean? Whoever did this has medical knowledge. They knew exactly how much to give you. Enough to cause a miscarriage without killing you immediately. It would have looked like pregnancy complications. Becca's phone buzzed constantly on the bedside table. She reached for it automatically. Unlock. Check messages. Lock. Unlock. Check again. Lock. The repetitive motion felt familiar, comforting in its normalcy, but now even her phone felt dangerous. Who had she told about her pregnancy routines? Who knew she drank tea every morning at exactly 8:30? Mrs. Matthews, Grace said gently, when did you start drinking the prenatal tea? 4 months ago. David brought it home from that health conference in Chicago. He said it would help with labor preparation. Grace made a note. Did you buy more tea after the original container? No, it was a big tin. David said it would last the whole pregnancy. Grace and Dr. Hendricks exchanged glances. What? Becca demanded. The original tea was fine, Dr. Hendricks said. Someone has been adding herbs to it gradually, a little more each week. The baby kicked. Becca pressed her hand to her belly. You knew, didn't you? You were trying to tell me something was wrong. Her daughter had been quieter lately, less active during her usual busy times. Becca had assumed it was normal late pregnancy behavior. Now she realized her baby had been fighting poison for weeks. We need to move you to complete bed rest, Dr. Hendricks said. Any more stress could trigger premature labor. The herbs have weakened the placental wall. David stood abruptly. I need to check on some things. Make sure the house is secure. Grace's eyes followed him. Mr. Matthews, I'd prefer if you stayed here. My wife needs me to handle the practical things. Insurance, security systems, work arrangements. After he left, Grace moved closer to Becca's bed. Mrs. Matthews, I need to ask you some difficult questions. About David. About everyone who has access to your home, your routines, your pregnancy details. Becca thought carefully. The cleaning service comes twice a week, but they don't go in the kitchen much. My friend Sarah Collins visits sometimes. David's mother Margaret has a key for emergencies. What about David's work colleagues? Anyone who might visit your home? Sometimes company parties, the pharmaceutical sales team. David works with several companies on real estate development for medical facilities. Grace's pen stopped moving. Pharmaceutical sales. Yes, they develop medical complexes, hospitals, research facilities. David works closely with the sales representatives. Do any of them visit your home regularly? Becca tried to remember. There's Vanessa Sterling. She comes by sometimes to discuss projects with David. She's very sweet, always asks about the pregnancy. Grace's expression sharpened. Vanessa Sterling, from which company? Morrison Pharmaceuticals. She specializes in herbal supplements. Actually, she's the one who recommended I try prenatal tea when I was having morning sickness. The silence in the room became thick, heavy. Mrs. Matthews, I need you to think very carefully. Has Vanessa Sterling ever been alone in your kitchen? Well, yes. She helps herself to coffee when she visits. David and I usually talk in his office while she waits in the kitchen. She's practically family. Grace stood and walked to the window. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Morrison, it's Sullivan. I need everything you can find on Vanessa Sterling. Morrison Pharmaceuticals. Access to controlled substances? And I need it now. She hung up and returned to Becca's bedside. I'm going to show you something. Security footage from your kitchen. Grace pulled out a tablet. The screen showed Becca's kitchen in black and white. The timestamp read 3:15 in the morning from 5 days ago. A figure entered through the back door. Female, medium height, dark hair. She moved directly to the tea canister on the counter. Becca watched in horror as the woman opened the tin and added something from a small vial. She mixed it carefully, closed the container, wiped the counter clean. Oh my God, Becca whispered. She has a key. The woman on the screen turned toward the camera. The image was grainy but recognizable. Vanessa Sterling. She's been coming into our house while we slept, poisoning my tea, trying to kill my baby. Grace nodded grimly. The anonymous tip came from her coworker. Someone noticed herbs missing from their controlled substance inventory. Pennyroyal, tansy, black cohosh, all pregnancy-terminating herbs. Becca's world shifted again. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. The sweet pharmaceutical rep who asked about her pregnancy cravings, who recommended the perfect tea for morning sickness, who always hugged her goodbye and told her what a lucky woman she was. How long has she been doing this? Based on your blood work, probably 6 weeks, since around your 24-week mark. But why? What did I ever do to her? Grace's phone rang. She answered immediately. Sullivan. Yeah, I see. Bring her in. She hung up and looked at Becca with grim satisfaction. Vanessa Sterling is being arrested right now. We found detailed notes in her apartment, your daily schedule, your pregnancy symptoms, photos of you taken without your knowledge. Photos. Dozens of them. You at the grocery store, walking to your car, in your kitchen through the window. She's been watching you for months. The baby kicked hard. As if responding to her mother's shock and fear, Becca pressed both hands to her belly. It's okay, sweetheart. The bad lady can't hurt us anymore. But even as she said it, questions multiplied in her mind. How did Vanessa get a key to their house? How did she know Becca's exact routine? Why target her specifically? And why did David's reaction feel so wrong? Grace seemed to read her thoughts. Mrs. Matthews, there's more. The investigation is just beginning. A knock at the door interrupted them. David returned carrying flowers and a concerned expression that looked almost practiced. How are you feeling? Honey, any changes with the baby? Better now that we know what happened. Grace caught the person who was poisoning me. David's face showed appropriate shock. They caught someone. Who was it? Vanessa Sterling. For just a moment, David's expression changed. A flicker of something. Fear, guilt, recognition. Vanessa. But that's impossible. She's always been so supportive of your pregnancy. He sat down heavily in the visitor's chair. I can't believe someone we trusted would do this. Grace watched him carefully. Mr. Matthews, when did you last see Vanessa Sterling? A few days ago. She stopped by to discuss the Morrison Pharmaceuticals project. Why? What time did she visit? Evening, maybe 7 or 8. We ordered takeout and worked late. Grace made notes. Did she go into the kitchen during this visit? Of course. She helped serve dinner. Cleaned up afterward. Vanessa's very helpful. So she had access to your wife's tea that evening. David's face paled slightly. I never thought. She was just being nice. Helpful. But Becca noticed something else. When David mentioned ordering takeout, he looked away from her. The same tell he had when he lied about working late or forgetting to pay bills. David, she said slowly, what kind of project are you working on with Vanessa? Real estate development, a new medical complex, very complicated zoning issues. Grace leaned forward. Mr. Matthews, how long have you been working with Miss Sterling on this project? 6 months, maybe 7. And how often does she visit your home? Weekly. Sometimes more if we have deadlines. Becca felt the baby shift inside her, a rolling movement that felt almost protective, like her daughter was trying to shield them both from a truth too terrible to face. Grace, she said quietly, I want to see those photos, the ones Vanessa took of me. Grace hesitated. Mrs. Matthews, they might be disturbing. I need to see them. Grace pulled out her tablet again. The photos filled the screen. Dozens of images. Becca at the grocery store, getting her car washed, walking in the park, and one that made her blood freeze. Becca and David having dinner at Romano's restaurant. The photo was taken through the window, but the angle was wrong. Too close. Too intimate. Someone had been sitting inside the restaurant, at a nearby table, close enough to capture David's hand reaching across to touch Becca's cheek. Grace, Becca said slowly, this picture wasn't taken from outside the restaurant. Nah, it wasn't. Someone was having dinner very close to our table that night. Yes. Becca looked at her husband. David was staring at the tablet screen. His face had gone completely white. David, she said softly, you look like you've seen a ghost. He opened his mouth to respond when Grace's phone rang again. Sullivan, what are you sure? Okay, no, stay with her. I'm coming. She hung up and looked directly at David. Mr. Matthews, I need you to come with me to the police station. Now. What? Why? Because Vanessa Sterling just told us something very interesting. She says she wasn't acting alone. The baby kicked again, hard enough to take Becca's breath away. David, she whispered, but her husband was already standing, already moving toward the door, already running from the truth that was about to destroy everything she thought she knew about her life. "I'll be back," he said without looking at her. "I'll explain everything." But Becca knew he wouldn't. Some truths were too terrible to explain. Becca sat alone in the hospital bathroom staring at her reflection. Her face looked pale and hollow. Her 7-month pregnant belly seemed to mock her from the mirror. She'd trusted everyone, believed everyone, and someone had tried to murder her unborn child. The major twist came at exactly 22 minutes into her ordeal. Grace returned with Detective Frank Morrison, a weathered man in his 40s with kind eyes and calloused hands. They carried files thick with evidence. "Mrs. Matthews," Detective Morrison said gently, "we need to show you something." They set up a laptop on her bedside table. Security footage filled the screen. Her kitchen, 3:15 in the morning, 5 days ago. But this time, Grace played the entire sequence. The back door opened. Vanessa Sterling entered with her own key. She moved confidently through the dark house. No hesitation, no fumbling for light switches. She knew exactly where everything was located. Vanessa went straight to the tea canister, added powder from a small vial, mixed it carefully, but then she did something that made Becca's blood freeze. She pulled out her phone and sent a text message. "Who was she texting at 3 in the morning?" Becca asked. Grace fast-forwarded the footage. "Watch." 2 minutes later, Becca's phone lit up on the kitchen counter. A text message notification glowed in the darkness. "She was testing to see if your phone would wake you up," Detective Morrison said, "making sure you stayed asleep while she poisoned your tea." But that wasn't the worst part. Grace played more footage, different dates, different times, always the same pattern. Vanessa entering with her key, adding herbs to the tea, testing to ensure the house remained quiet. "How many times?" Becca whispered. 12, over 6 weeks. "But how did she get our key?" Grace and Detective Morrison exchanged glances. "Mrs. Matthews," Grace said carefully, "Vanessa Sterling has been having an affair with your husband for 8 months. The words hit like physical blows. Becca felt her baby kick frantically inside her, as if responding to her mother's shock. "That's not possible. David wouldn't." "We have credit card records, hotel receipts, text messages, phone calls." "David gave Vanessa Sterling a key to your house 6 months ago." Becca's world shattered completely. Every memory replayed with new meaning. David's late meetings, his defensive behavior when she asked about work, the way he'd started taking phone calls in private, and Vanessa, sweet, helpful Vanessa, the pharmaceutical rep who always asked about her pregnancy, who recommended the perfect prenatal tea when Becca complained about morning sickness, who hugged her goodbye and said how lucky she was to have such a devoted husband. "She was studying me," Becca said slowly, "learning my habits, my routines, my vulnerabilities. Yes, her apartment contained detailed notes about your daily schedule, what you ate, when you slept, your pregnancy symptoms. She documented everything." The memory flooding began. Every interaction with Vanessa took on sinister new meaning. 4 months ago, at a company barbecue, "Becca, you look radiant. Pregnancy suits you. Are you taking any supplements?" "Just prenatal vitamins. But I've been having terrible morning sickness." "Oh, I know just the thing. Red raspberry leaf tea. It's miraculous for pregnancy issues. I'll get you some from my company samples." 3 months ago when Vanessa visited for dinner, "David, you're so lucky to have Becca. She's glowing. When are you due?" "Honey, December 15th. The doctor says everything looks perfect." "That's wonderful. You must be so excited to become parents." But Vanessa's eyes had been cold, calculating. She wasn't making conversation. She was gathering intelligence. 2 months ago during another visit, "How's the morning sickness?" "Becca, is the tea helping?" "It's amazing. I feel so much better. I drink it every morning at 8:30, right after David leaves for work." Every morning at 8:30. What a good routine. Consistency is so important during pregnancy. Now Becca understood. Vanessa had been documenting her routine, learning the perfect time to add more poison to her tea. "She was planning to kill my baby," Becca said. It wasn't a question. The medical examiner says the herb concentrations would have caused late-term miscarriage within another week, Detective Morrison confirmed. It would have looked like pregnancy complications, tragic but natural, and then David would be free to comfort each other through the grief. Grace nodded grimly. That appears to have been the plan. Becca pressed her hands to her belly. The baby rolled and kicked, stronger now that the poisoning had stopped. But something went wrong with their plan. The anonymous tip, someone at Vanessa's company noticed missing inventory, herbs that aren't normally available to sales reps. They reported it to police. So you sent Grace undercover. We needed to document everything. The poisoning was subtle, professional. We needed evidence that would hold up in court. Becca looked at Grace with new understanding. You saved our lives. I did my job. But Mrs. Matthews, there's more you need to know. Nar, Grace pulled out another file. David's been embezzling money from his real estate business. Large amounts, and he recently increased your life insurance policy to $2 million. The truth hit like a sledgehammer. He was planning to kill me all along. We believe the plan evolved. Initially, Vanessa may have acted alone out of jealousy, but when David realized the potential financial benefit, he became her partner in attempted murder. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Matthews, your husband gave Vanessa detailed information about your routines, your pregnancy symptoms, your daily habits. He enabled everything. The baby kicked again, sharp jabs that felt almost protective, like her daughter was trying to fight back against the betrayal. A knock interrupted them. Becca's mother-in-law Margaret entered carrying flowers and wearing her usual disapproving expression. Rebecca, what's all this nonsense about David being arrested? He called from the police station. Something about misunderstandings. Margaret Matthews had never liked Becca. She'd made that clear from the wedding day onward. Nothing Becca did was ever good enough for her precious son. It's not a misunderstanding. Margaret, David's been having an affair. His mistress has been trying to kill me and the baby. Margaret's face flushed red. That's ridiculous. David would never cheat on you. You must have driven him to this somehow. There it was, the familiar pattern. Even attempted murder was somehow Becca's fault. Mrs. Matthews, Grace interrupted. Your son gave his mistress a key to their house. He provided her with Rebecca's daily routines. He enabled her to poison his pregnant wife. Margaret sank into the visitor's chair. For the first time since Becca had known her, David's mother looked uncertain. But the baby? David's so excited about being a father. He increased Rebecca's life insurance to $2 million last month, Detective Morrison said. If she died in childbirth, he'd inherit everything. He could start over with his mistress and stolen money. The room fell silent, except for the steady beep of monitors. Margaret stared at her hands. I raised a monster. It was the first time she'd ever acknowledged that David might be flawed. The first crack in 8 years of blind maternal devotion. Becca felt something shift inside her. Not the baby, something deeper. The realization that she wasn't alone in this betrayal. Even David's mother was finally seeing the truth. Margaret, she said quietly, I know you've never liked me, but I need you to understand something. I never wanted to take David away from you. I just wanted to love him. Margaret looked up with tears in her eyes. I know that now. I'm so sorry. Rebecca, for everything. Grace's phone buzzed. She read the message and looked up grimly. Vanessa Sterling made bail, her lawyers claiming temporary insanity driven by the affair. She'll be out within the hour. Fear shot through Becca like ice water. She can come back. There's a restraining order. But Mrs. Matthews, we need to be realistic. Desperate people do desperate things. As if summoned by their fears, the hospital's security system announced a code yellow. Unauthorized person in the maternity ward. Grace drew her weapon. Stay with her, she told Detective Morrison. Through the reinforced window, Becca could see nurses running in the hallway, security guards rushing toward the elevator banks. And then she saw her, Vanessa Sterling, walking calmly down the corridor like she belonged there. No longer pretending to be sweet or helpful, her face was cold, determined. She was coming for them. The baby kicked frantically inside Becca's belly, as if her daughter could sense the approaching danger. She's here, Becca whispered. She's here to finish what she started. Hospital security tackled Vanessa Sterling 20 feet from Becca's room, but not before she screamed words that would haunt Becca forever. He promised me you'd be gone by Christmas. He promised we'd be together. Grace returned 15 minutes later as they wheeled Vanessa away in restraints. The pharmaceutical rep had violated her bail conditions within hours of release. She won't be getting out again, Grace said grimly. But the damage was done. Vanessa's words echoed in Becca's mind. He promised me you'd be gone by Christmas. David arrived an hour later carrying roses and wearing his best apologetic expression, the same face he'd used when caught in smaller lies over the years. Forgotten anniversaries, missed dinners, mysterious credit card charges. But this wasn't about forgotten anniversaries. Becca, honey, I can explain everything. She looked at her husband of 8 years, the man who'd proposed in Central Park, who'd carried her over the threshold of their first apartment, who'd cried when they saw their baby's ultrasound, the man who'd been planning her murder. Explain what? David, that your mistress tried to kill our baby. It's not what you think. Vanessa became obsessed. I tried to end it, but she threatened to hurt you if I left her. Grace stepped forward. Mr. Matthews, that's not what your text messages indicate. David's face paled. What text messages? Grace pulled out printed pages. Dozens of them. These text messages, between you and Vanessa Sterling, starting 8 months ago, she read aloud in a flat, professional voice. October 15th. David to Vanessa. Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell me again how beautiful you are. October 22nd. Vanessa to David. She suspects something. We need to be more careful. October 29th. David to Vanessa. Rebecca's pregnancy is making everything complicated. She's so needy now. Each message was a knife in Becca's chest, but Grace continued relentlessly. November 5th. Vanessa to David. I can't stand watching you pretend to be happy with her. November 12th. David to Vanessa. Soon, baby. Just be patient. December 1st. Vanessa to David. The tea is working. She's getting weaker. Another few weeks and nature will take its course. December 3rd. David to Vanessa. Perfect. Make sure it looks natural. Pregnancy complications happen all the time. The room fell deadly silent. Even the monitors seemed to pause. Becca stared at her husband. You knew she was poisoning me. Becca, I can explain. You gave her our house key. You told her my routines. You knew I drank that tea every morning at 8:30. David's carefully prepared excuses crumbled. I never thought she'd actually hurt you. She was just talking crazy because of the affair. She was documenting my pregnancy symptoms for 6 weeks. David, taking photos of me without my permission? Planning exactly how to kill our baby? But I didn't know about that part. Grace stepped closer. Mr. Matthews, your text message from December 3rd says, make sure it looks natural. What did you think Vanessa was planning to make look natural? David's face went white. He'd been caught in his own words. The life insurance policy, Detective Morrison added from his position by the door. $2 million. Increased last month. Why? We needed more coverage with the baby coming. $2 million for a 32-year-old marketing executive? That's unusual coverage for someone with no major health issues. I wanted to be prepared. Becca felt something dark and powerful rising in her chest. Not sadness, not fear. Rage. You chose her over our baby's life. That's who I married. Becca, please, I love you. I love our daughter. No, you love $2 million. You love starting over with your pharmaceutical sales rep and the money you stole from your business? David's eyes widened. How did you know about the embezzlement? The missing funds from your real estate accounts? Grace found everything? David, every lie, every theft, every betrayal. The baby kicked hard against Becca's ribs, as if her daughter was responding to the anger building in her mother's voice. I trusted you with my life, with our baby's life, and you were planning to end both. That's not true. I never wanted you to die. Grace pulled out more evidence. Photos from Vanessa's apartment. A wall covered with pictures of Becca. Her daily routines mapped out like a military campaign. Notes about her pregnancy symptoms and vulnerabilities. Your mistress had detailed surveillance photos of your wife, Mr. Matthews, did you help her take these? David looked at the photos and his face crumpled. Oh God, I didn't know she was this obsessed. Prettier, but you did know she had access to controlled substances through her job. Yes. And you did know she was adding herbs to Rebecca's prenatal tea? She said they were vitamins, supplements to help with pregnancy. Pennyroyal and Tansy aren't vitamins. Mr. Matthews, they're abortifacients, herbs specifically used to terminate pregnancies. I didn't know that. Becca's anger exploded. You work with pharmaceutical companies every day. You develop medical facilities. You know exactly what those herbs do. David began crying, not the tears of genuine remorse, but the desperate weeping of someone caught in an inescapable trap. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? David, what was the plan exactly? Vanessa said the herbs would just make you sick, that you'd lose the baby naturally, that we could grieve together, and then eventually I'd leave for someone who understood me better. I remember the life insurance. That was separate, just good planning. $2 million is good planning for a baby's funeral. Margaret Matthews spoke from her corner chair. She'd been silent throughout the confrontation, watching her son destroy himself with his own words. David, she said quietly, tell her the truth. All of it. David looked at his mother with betrayal in his eyes. Mom, please. No, I've protected you from consequences your entire life. Look where it led. Tell Rebecca the truth about the insurance money. David's shoulders sagged in defeat. We were going to disappear after you lost the baby and recovered. I was going to leave. Vanessa had connections in South America. We could start over with the insurance money and the cash I'd saved from the business. Saved? Grace's voice was sharp. Okay, stolen. I stole money from client accounts. $800,000 over 2 years. If I didn't disappear soon, the auditors would find it. Becca felt her heart breaking and hardening simultaneously. So you decided to kill me instead of facing consequences for theft. I didn't decide anything. Vanessa became obsessed with eliminating you. I just didn't stop her. You enabled her. You gave her everything she needed to commit murder. The baby kicked again. Strong, determined kicks that felt like tiny fists fighting back. Becca pressed her hands to her belly and made a decision that surprised her with its clarity. David, I want you to leave. Now. Don't come back. Becca, please. We can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy. You tried to have me and our daughter murdered for insurance money. There's no therapy for that. Grace stepped forward. Mr. Matthews, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and embezzlement. As they handcuffed him, David looked back at Becca with desperate eyes. I never stopped loving you. You have to believe that. Becca met his gaze steadily. David, I don't think you ever loved anyone but yourself. After they took him away, the room fell quiet except for the steady rhythm of the baby's heartbeat on the monitor. Margaret approached Becca's bedside. Rebecca, I owe you an enormous apology. You didn't know. I didn't want to know. There's a difference. I've spent 35 years making excuses for David's behavior, blaming everyone else for his problems, including you. Becca looked at her mother-in-law with new eyes. What changed your mind? When he admitted planning to let you die, my son was willing to orphan his own child for money. There's no excuse for that. Margaret pulled out her checkbook. I want to help. Legal fees, medical bills, whatever you need to get through this. Margaret, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I failed to raise a decent man. The least I can do is help you raise a decent woman. She gestured toward Becca's belly. My granddaughter deserves better than the legacy David's created. The baby seemed to respond to her grandmother's voice with a gentle roll and stretch. She's strong, Margaret said with wonder. She survived poison and betrayal. She's going to be extraordinary. Becca felt the anger in her chest transform into something harder and more determined. Not just rage at betrayal, but fury at injustice. Determination to protect her daughter from a world that had tried to kill her before she was even born. Yes, she said firmly. She is going to be extraordinary. We both are. For the first time in 8 years, Becca felt completely certain about her future. Not because it would be easy, but because it would be hers. The baby kicked one more time, as if sealing the promise they'd made to each other. We survived. Now we thrive. Grace's investigation revealed David's crimes went deeper than anyone had imagined. The embezzlement wasn't opportunistic theft. It was systematic fraud spanning 3 years. $800,000, Detective Morrison said, spreading financial documents across Becca's hospital table. Stolen from client escrow accounts, construction loans, investment funds. He was running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme. Becca stared at the evidence. Her husband hadn't just betrayed her personally. He'd destroyed the financial futures of dozens of families. The Peterson family lost their retirement savings, Grace continued. David convinced them to invest in a medical complex that never existed. The money went straight into his personal accounts. And the Kowalski family, Detective Morrison added. They trusted him with their daughter's college fund, $200,000. Gone. Each revelation hit Becca like a physical blow. She'd been married to a sociopath for 8 years and never seen it. I trusted him with my life, and he was planning to end it. The words came out as a statement of fact, not self-pity. Her anger was transforming into something harder and more focused. Determination. Sarah Collins arrived during visiting hours carrying coffee and fierce loyalty. Becca's best friend since college had driven 6 hours from Philadelphia the moment she heard about the arrest. I've been documenting David's lies for months, Sarah said without preamble. Taking pictures, recording conversations. I knew something was wrong. She pulled out her phone and showed Becca dozens of photographs. David having lunch with Vanessa at expensive restaurants, entering hotels together, walking hand in hand through parks. Why didn't you tell me? Becca asked. I tried. Remember when I asked if everything was okay with your marriage? You said David was just stressed about work. I thought maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have forced you to listen. He would have convinced me you were jealous or mistaken. David's very good at manipulation. Grace looked up from her files. Mrs. Matthews, your friend's documentation is extremely valuable evidence. These photos establish a clear timeline of the affair. Sarah opened her laptop. There's more. I've been tracking David's social media activity. Look at this. She showed them David's Facebook account. To most observers, it looked normal. Pictures with Becca, updates about pregnancy excitement, comments about becoming a father. But Sarah had noticed something else. Look at the timing of his posts about your pregnancy, she said. Every positive comment about the baby coincides with dates when he was with Vanessa. He was performing happiness for social media while planning your murder. The pattern was chilling. David would post about his excitement over becoming a father, then immediately meet Vanessa at a hotel. He would share ultrasound photos with loving captions, then text his mistress about pregnancy complications. He was living 2 completely separate lives, Becca realized. And getting sloppy about it, Grace added. Desperate people make mistakes. Dr. Hendricks entered during their conversation carrying test results that made everyone pause. Mrs. Matthews, your blood work shows something interesting. The herb poisoning should have caused more severe symptoms than you experienced. What do you mean? Your body seems to have been fighting the toxins more effectively than expected. Did you change your diet recently? Add any supplements? Becca thought back. I started eating more organic fruits and vegetables about 2 months ago, and I began taking extra folic acid supplements. That may have saved your life, and your daughter's life. The folic acid helped your liver process the toxins. The antioxidants provided some protection against cellular damage. Esharuam. The baby kicked strongly as if responding to praise for her mother's health choices. So the poisoning was failing? Grace asked. Slowly, yes. Vanessa Sterling would have had to increase the dosage significantly to achieve her goals, which means the poisoning would have become obvious rather quickly. That explains why she became desperate enough to violate her restraining order, Detective Morrison said. Time was running out. Margaret Matthews returned with her lawyer and a stack of legal documents. David's mother had spent the morning liquidating assets to help Becca fight the legal battles ahead. I've transferred $500,000 to your legal defense fund, Margaret said. Money David never touched because it was in trusts he couldn't access. Margaret, that's too much. It's not nearly enough. My son destroyed your life and tried to murder my granddaughter. This is the least I can do. Margaret's transformation continued to amaze Becca. The cold, disapproving mother-in-law had become a fierce protector virtually overnight. There's something else, Margaret said quietly. I've been thinking about David's childhood. Patterns I ignored. Red flags I dismissed. She sat heavily in the visitor's chair. David killed the neighbor's cat when he was 12. Poisoned it with antifreeze. When confronted, he blamed another child. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Margaret, you don't have to. Yes, I do. In high school, his girlfriend Sarah Patterson broke up with him. 2 weeks later, she was hospitalized with food poisoning. It was traced to contaminated food from a restaurant where David worked part-time. The room fell silent. The police investigated, but they couldn't prove David was responsible. I convinced myself it was coincidence. But now, Grace leaned forward. Mrs. Matthews, are you saying David has a history of poisoning people who crossed him? Margaret nodded reluctantly. I think my son is a serial killer who never got caught. Vanessa Sterling wasn't his first victim. She was just his most recent partner. The implications were staggering. If Margaret was right, David hadn't simply stumbled into attempted murder. He'd been building toward this for years. We need to investigate his previous relationships, Detective Morrison said. Any unexplained illnesses or deaths? Sarah was already typing on her laptop. I can access high school records, college information, previous employment. As they worked, the baby began moving more actively inside Becca's belly, rolling and stretching and kicking as if responding to the energy of investigation around her. Becca pressed her hands to her belly. You know we're fighting for justice, don't you? Sweetheart, you're part of this team. The baby kicked directly under her hand as if answering. Grace's phone rang. She listened intently, then hung up with grim satisfaction. Vanessa Sterling wants to make a deal. She's willing to testify against David in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of deal? Becca asked. She'll admit to the poisoning conspiracy, but claims David coerced her. Says he threatened to expose her theft of controlled substances if she didn't help eliminate you. Detective Morrison snorted. Honor among thieves? Should I take the deal? Becca asked. Grace considered carefully. With Vanessa's testimony, we can guarantee David gets convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. Without it, good defense lawyers might reduce the charges to negligent endangerment. What would Vanessa get? 15 years instead of life. She'd be eligible for parole in 10. The baby kicked hard against Becca's ribs, a sharp, demanding movement that felt almost like protest. No, Becca said suddenly. No deals. Everyone stared at her. Vanessa Sterling tried to murder my baby. She stalked me for months. She violated her restraining order to try to finish the job. She doesn't get to negotiate her way out of consequences. Mrs. Matthews, Grace said gently. Without her testimony, there's a chance David could get a lighter sentence. Then we'll have to build a stronger case without her. Sarah looked up from her laptop. Actually, I think we can. Look what I found. She turned the screen toward them. A high school yearbook page from 1998. David's senior class photo alongside a memorial page. Jennifer Walsh, David's girlfriend senior year. Died of sudden organ failure 2 weeks before graduation. Cause unknown. She scrolled to another page. Emily Rodriguez, David's college roommate's girlfriend. Hospitalized sophomore year with mysterious poisoning. Dropped out of school afterward. The pattern was becoming clear. David had been eliminating women who threatened his plans for decades. Lisa Chang, Sarah continued, David's first business partner's wife. She opposed their real estate venture. Died of apparent heart failure at 31. No previous heart problems. How many? Becca asked quietly. Sarah kept scrolling. At least 6 suspicious deaths or hospitalizations connected to women in David's life over 15 years. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if her daughter was responding to the magnitude of evil they were uncovering. Becca felt her anger crystallizing into cold determination. We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for all of them. Every woman David hurt, every family he destroyed. Grace nodded slowly. Mrs. Matthews, what are you saying? I'm saying we reject Vanessa's deal. We build the strongest possible case. We make sure they both get exactly what they deserve. That's a risk. Trials are unpredictable. Becca looked around the room at the women who'd become her allies. Sarah, who'd documented the lies. Grace, who'd risked her life to protect them. Margaret, who'd chosen justice over maternal loyalty. Dr. Hendricks, who'd fought to save them both. Sometimes the right choice is also the risky choice. My daughter deserves to grow up in a world where attempted murder has real consequences. The baby rolled and settled, as if satisfied with her mother's decision. No deals, Becca repeated firmly. We fight. Becca sat in the hospital garden at dawn, feeling her daughter move inside her belly. The baby's kicks were stronger now, more determined, like tiny fists pushing back against the darkness that had tried to consume them both. How close we came to death. The thought whispered through her mind as she watched sunrise paint the sky pink and gold. If Grace hadn't been placed under cover, if the anonymous tip hadn't come through, if her body hadn't fought the poison so effectively, a dozen small miracles had kept them alive. The peaceful moment shattered when hospital security rushed past her window. Code yellow. Unauthorized person in the secured wing. Again, Vanessa Sterling had somehow violated her increased security restrictions. The pharmaceutical rep who tried to murder her baby was back. Grace appeared at Becca's bedside within minutes, weapon drawn and expression grim. She made bail again. Different judge. High-powered legal team. They argued she posed no flight risk. How is that possible? She violated her restraining order yesterday. Money. Influence. A very expensive lawyer who convinced the judge that Vanessa was suffering from temporary psychological break caused by manipulation. The baby kicked frantically inside Becca's belly, as if sensing approaching danger. Where is she now? Hospital security has her contained in the lobby, but Mrs. Matthews, she's demanding to speak with you. Claims she has information that will clear David. Becca felt fear crawl up her spine like ice water. I don't want to see her. You don't have to. But the prosecutor thinks hearing what she has to say might be valuable for building our case. What do you think? Grace holstered her weapon and sat beside the bed. I think Vanessa Sterling is desperate and dangerous, but I also think confronting her might give you some answers you need. Through the window, Becca could see news vans gathering in the hospital parking lot. Someone had leaked the story to the media. Pharmaceutical rep attempts to murder pregnant woman with herbal poison. Her private nightmare was becoming public entertainment. If I talk to her, will you be there? Every second, armed and ready. 30 minutes later, they brought Vanessa Sterling to a secure conference room under heavy guard. The woman who entered bore little resemblance to the sweet pharmaceutical rep Becca remembered. Vanessa's designer clothes were wrinkled. Her perfect makeup was smeared. Her eyes held the wild intensity of someone who'd lost touch with reality. But her voice was calm, controlled, terrifying. Hello, Rebecca. You look well considering everything you've been through. Considering you tried to murder my baby, you mean? Vanessa smiled. The expression was chilling. I never wanted to hurt your baby. I wanted to free her from having you as a mother. The words hit like physical blows. Grace's hand moved toward her weapon. You see, Rebecca, David told me all about you. How demanding you were, how you trapped him with pregnancy, how miserable you made him. That's not true, isn't it? When did you last make him truly happy? When did you last put his needs before your own selfish desires? Becca felt something dark and familiar stir in her chest. The self-doubt David had cultivated for years. The constant questioning of her own worth. Maybe she's right. Maybe I was a terrible wife. But then the baby kicked. Hard. Demanding. As if her daughter was saying, don't listen to her lies. David made his own choices, Becca said firmly. He chose to steal money. He chose to have an affair. He chose to help you poison me. Vanessa's mask slipped slightly. He loves me. He never loved you. You were just an obligation, a burden. Then why didn't he just divorce me? Because you would have taken half of everything, including money that rightfully belonged to us. Money he stole from client accounts. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Money we earned through hard work and sacrifice. Building something beautiful together. Grace leaned forward. Ms. Sterling, building what exactly? A relationship based on attempted murder. You don't understand, Rebecca was the obstacle to everything good in David's life. Removing her wasn't murder. It was liberation. The casual way Vanessa discussed eliminating her made Becca's blood freeze. This woman genuinely believed attempted murder was justified. You planned my death for months, took photos of me without permission, studied my habits like I was prey. I studied you because I wanted to understand what David saw in you. But the more I watched, the more I realized you were nothing special. Just an ordinary woman who got lucky. Vanessa leaned forward with intense eyes. Do you know what it's like to love someone who's trapped in a loveless marriage, to watch him suffer every day because he's too honorable to abandon his responsibilities? Too honorable? Grace's voice was incredulous. He was planning to collect $2 million in life insurance after your murder plot succeeded. That money would have let us start over somewhere beautiful, away from all the judgment and small-minded people who couldn't understand what we had. The baby rolled inside Becca's belly, a protective movement that felt like a hug from within. Becca realized something important. Vanessa Sterling wasn't just a murderer. She was completely delusional, living in a fantasy world where attempted murder was an act of love. Vanessa, David was using you, the same way he used me. That's not true. He increased my life insurance policy without telling you, didn't he? Because if you'd known about the money, you might have demanded a bigger share. Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. David wouldn't deceive me. He deceived me for 8 years. What makes you special? Grace pulled out copies of David's text messages. Miss Sterling, look at message dated December 8th. What does David say about your role in the murder plan? Vanessa read silently. Her face went pale. Let Vanessa take the fall if anything goes wrong. I can always claim she was acting alone out of jealousy. The words hung in the air like poison. That's not... He didn't mean... Vanessa's voice cracked. He was planning to betray you the same way he betrayed me, Becca said gently. You were just another disposable woman in David's world. Vanessa stared at the text messages as her fantasy crumbled. But he said he loved me. David says what people want to hear. It's how he manipulates everyone. The woman who tried to murder her baby began crying. Not tears of remorse, but tears of betrayal and shattered illusions. I gave up everything for him. My career, my reputation, my freedom. And he was planning to sacrifice you to save himself. Grace watched this exchange with professional interest. Miss Sterling, are you ready to tell us the truth about David's involvement in the poisoning plan? Vanessa looked up with eyes full of rage, but now the rage was directed at David instead of Becca. The truth, David didn't just know about the herbs. He researched them. He calculated dosages. He told me exactly how much to use and when to use it. Go on. He said late-term miscarriage would be easier to explain than early pregnancy loss, more believable as natural complications. The clinical precision of their planning made Becca's stomach turn. David provided detailed information about Rebecca's daily routine. What time she drank tea, how much she consumed, when she was most vulnerable. What else? He practiced looking surprised and grief-stricken, rehearsed his reactions for when she lost the baby. David's very good at performing emotions he doesn't feel. Each revelation was another nail in David's legal coffin, but also another confirmation of how thoroughly he'd deceived them both. Why are you telling us this now? Becca asked. Vanessa's laugh was bitter. Because David Matthews is a monster who destroys every woman stupid enough to love him. And I was the stupidest of all. The baby kicked against Becca's ribs, a strong, determined kick that felt like victory. Ms. Sterling, Grace said carefully, are you willing to testify against David in court? Yes. I want him to pay for what he did to both of us. After they took Vanessa back to custody, Becca sat in the quiet conference room processing everything she'd heard. I almost felt sorry for her, she said to Grace. She tried to murder your baby. I know, but she's also a victim of David's manipulation, just like I was. Grace considered this. Mrs. Matthews, you were manipulated into loving someone who didn't deserve it. Vanessa Sterling was manipulated into attempting murder. There's a significant difference. The baby settled into a calm, steady rhythm of movement, as if her daughter approved of the distinction. Grace, what happens now? Now we have enough evidence to convict David of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, premeditated, with financial motive. He's looking at life in prison. And Vanessa, attempted murder, stalking, violation of restraining order, 25 years minimum. Becca pressed her hands to her belly. Did you hear that? Sweetheart, justice is coming. The baby kicked once. Gently, like a quiet promise that they would both survive this nightmare and emerge stronger. I'm the only one who can speak for my baby. No one else will fight for us. But as she said the words, Becca realized they were no longer true. Grace was fighting for them. Margaret was fighting for them. Sarah was fighting for them. Dr. Hendricks was fighting for them. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone. The baby seemed to sense this shift in her mother's emotions. The frantic kicking settled into peaceful rolling movements. We're safe, Becca thought. We're safe and we're not alone, and we're going to be okay. The thought felt like a revelation. Grace's investigation uncovered a pattern that chilled everyone involved in the case. 3 women, Detective Morrison said, spreading files across Becca's hospital table. 3 previous relationships where David's romantic interests ended up poisoned. Jennifer Walsh, high school girlfriend who died of organ failure after breaking up with David. Emily Rodriguez, college acquaintance who was hospitalized with mysterious toxins after refusing his advances. Lisa Chang, business partner's wife who opposed David's real estate ventures. All 3 cases were investigated. None resulted in charges. David was very careful to maintain plausible deniability. Becca stared at the photos of young women whose lives had been cut short or permanently damaged by the man she'd married. I could have been any of them, but you weren't, Grace said firmly. You survived, and now these women finally get justice. The baby moved restlessly inside Becca's belly, as if responding to the weight of responsibility settling on her mother's shoulders. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every woman David had harmed. I'm not just surviving this, I'm building something stronger from the pieces. The words emerged from a place of quiet certainty Becca had never accessed before. Not the desperate hope of early recovery, but the solid determination of someone who'd faced the worst and refused to be broken by it. Sarah Collins returned with a laptop full of research and a fierce expression. I've been tracking David's pattern across 15 years. Every woman who crossed him ended up sick, injured, or dead within 6 months. She'd created a timeline that read like a serial killer's progression, each incident more sophisticated than the last, each cover story more believable. David's been perfecting his technique for decades. Margaret Matthews entered, carrying legal documents and a grim expression. I've been going through David's childhood medical records. I found something disturbing. She placed a file on the table. When David was 14, I was hospitalized for 3 weeks with mysterious stomach problems. The doctors never found a cause. The room fell silent. I blamed stress from David's father's death, but looking back, the symptoms match what Rebecca experienced. Gradual weakness, digestive issues, liver problems. You think David poisoned his own mother? Grace asked. I think David has been eliminating women who disappointed him since he was a teenager, including me when I remarried someone he didn't like. The magnitude of David's pathology was staggering. He hadn't stumbled into attempted murder. He'd been building toward it his entire adult life. Becca pressed her hands to her belly, feeling her daughter's strong kicks. How did I never see it? Because he's very good at manipulation, Dr. Hendricks said, entering with afternoon test results. Sociopaths are skilled at presenting themselves as whatever their target wants to see. The baby's responding beautifully to the treatment, she continued. Heart rate is strong and steady. Growth is normal. Whatever damage the herbs might have caused has been minimal. She's a fighter, Margaret said with obvious pride. Just like her mother. Becca looked around the room at the women who'd become her support system. Sarah, who'd documented David's lies despite being dismissed as paranoid. Grace, who'd risked her career going undercover to protect them. Margaret, who'd chosen justice over blind maternal loyalty. Dr. Hendricks, who'd fought to save them both. I never had sisters growing up, she said quietly. But I think this is what it must feel like. Sarah squeezed her hand. You're not alone in this anymore. None of us are, Grace added. This case has shown me something about the power of women supporting each other. They spent the afternoon creating something unprecedented in law enforcement, a comprehensive victim impact statement spanning 15 years of David's crimes. Each woman David had harmed would have her voice heard in court. Their families would have closure. Their suffering would have meaning. Jennifer Walsh's mother wants to testify, Sarah said, reading from her phone. She's been waiting 20 years for someone to believe that David killed her daughter. Emily Rodriguez is flying in from California. She kept medical records from her poisoning incident. Lisa Chang's sister has bank records showing David benefited financially from her death. The list continued. Women who'd been dismissed, ignored, or discredited when they tried to report David's behavior. Now their stories would be heard together, creating an undeniable pattern. Becca found herself knitting baby clothes while they worked. Each stitch was a defiant act of hope, a refusal to let fear dictate her future. Pink yarn for a daughter who would grow up knowing her worth. Soft blankets for a child who would be surrounded by strong women. Tiny socks for feet that would walk confidently through a world that had tried to destroy them. What color for the nursery? Margaret asked, looking over Becca's shoulder. Yellow, bright, cheerful yellow, like sunshine. Perfect. Hope and new beginnings. As evening approached, prosecutor Jennifer Walsh arrived to discuss trial strategy. By coincidence, she shared the name of David's first victim. Mrs. Matthews, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared to testify in detail about the poisoning attempts? Yes. About your husband's betrayal, the affair, the financial crimes? Yes. About the life insurance policy and the plan to kill you? Becca looked at her daughter's latest ultrasound photo, a perfect profile, tiny hands pressed against her face as if thinking, yes, I'll testify about all of it. The defense will try to paint you as a bitter, vindictive wife seeking revenge. Then they'll be wrong. I'm not bitter. I'm determined. The baby rolled and settled, as if satisfied with her mother's resolve. Prosecutor Walsh smiled. Good. Because with your testimony and Vanessa Sterling's confession, David Matthews is looking at life in prison without parole. What about the other victims' families? Each family will have the opportunity to present victim impact statements. This trial will be about more than just your case. It will be about justice for every woman David harmed. After everyone left, Becca sat alone in her hospital room, watching her daughter's movements ripple across her belly. The baby was active tonight, rolling and stretching and kicking as if preparing for the world outside. You know we're doing something important, don't you? She whispered. You're part of this fight for justice. The baby kicked directly under her hand as if answering. Grace knocked and entered, carrying 2 cups of herbal tea. Chamomile, she said with a slight smile. Checked and verified, safe by hospital staff. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set through the secure windows. Grace, what happens after the trial? You raise your daughter. You rebuild your life. You become the woman this experience taught you to be. What kind of woman is that? Grace studied her carefully. A woman who survived attempted murder and chose justice over revenge? A woman who protected her child from evil? A woman who built a sisterhood from the ashes of betrayal? The baby kicked again, and Becca smiled. That sounds like someone I'd like to know. She sounds like someone who would change the world. Outside, stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Each point of light seemed like a promise, a reminder that darkness never lasted forever. The baby settled into peaceful sleep inside her mother's belly, surrounded by love and protected by the strongest force in the universe, a mother's determination to keep her child safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, legal battles, media attention, the slow work of healing and rebuilding. But tonight, they were safe. They were surrounded by people who cared. They were preparing for justice, and that was enough. The plea deal arrived on a Tuesday morning. 25 years for David, 15 for Vanessa. Both would be eligible for parole in their 50s. Prosecutor Jennifer Walsh spread the documents across Becca's hospital bedside table with obvious reluctance. The defense is pushing hard for this. They're arguing that taking it to trial risks acquittal on the more serious charges. Becca was 34 weeks pregnant now. Her belly had grown enormous, but the baby was healthy and strong. Dr. Hendricks monitored them twice daily. Every test showed normal development despite the weeks of poisoning. She tried to murder my baby, That deserves consequences. I agree, but Mrs. Matthews, trials are unpredictable. Juries can be swayed by good defense attorneys. If we lose on the first-degree murder conspiracy charges, David could serve as little as 10 years. Becca looked out the window at reporters gathered in the hospital parking lot. The case had become national news. Pharmaceutical rep and real estate developer plot wife's murder through herbal poisoning. Headlines that reduced her nightmare to sensational entertainment. What do you recommend? Honestly, take the deal. Guaranteed convictions, significant prison time, justice served. Becca pressed her hands to her belly. The baby was awake and active, rolling and kicking as if participating in the conversation. I need time to think. After Prosecutor Walsh left, Becca practiced her testimony in the mirror across from her bed. The words that would either convict her husband or set him free. David Matthews planned my murder for financial gain. He enabled Vanessa Sterling to poison me gradually over 6 weeks. He increased my life insurance policy to $2 million without my knowledge. He stole $800,000 from client accounts to fund his escape with his mistress. The rehearsal felt like practicing for the most important performance of her life. Grace entered, carrying files and a somber expression. Mrs. Anna Matthews, I need to tell you something. David's legal team is very good. They're planning to argue that he was manipulated by Vanessa Sterling, that she seduced him and convinced him to participate in her jealousy-driven scheme. But the text messages prove he was an active participant. They'll claim those messages show him trying to manage an increasingly dangerous situation, that he was afraid to cross Vanessa after she threatened to hurt you. The baby kicked hard against Becca's ribs, sharp, demanding movements that felt like protest. So they're going to paint David as another victim. That's their strategy. Vanessa Sterling as the manipulative mastermind, David as the weak man who got in over his head. Sarah Collins burst through the door carrying her laptop and an expression of fierce determination. I found something that changes everything. She set up her computer and pulled up a video file. Security footage from Morrison Pharmaceuticals from 6 months ago, before David claims the affair started. The grainy video showed David entering the pharmaceutical building. The timestamp read 10:47 p.m. That's after business hours, Grace observed. Sarah fast-forwarded. Watch. David and Vanessa emerged from the building together at 2:13 a.m. They were carrying boxes and small containers. What's in the boxes? Becca asked. According to the inventory logs I hacked, controlled substances, herbs and compounds used for medical research, including pennyroyal and tansy. They were stealing together 6 months ago. It gets better. Sarah pulled up more files. Bank records show David opened a joint safety deposit box with Vanessa 8 months ago. Long before he claims she became obsessed with eliminating you. The evidence was devastating. David hadn't been manipulated into attempted murder. He'd been planning it from the beginning. Margaret Matthews arrived carrying flowers and legal documents. David's mother had spent the morning meeting with victims' families from his previous crimes. Rebecca, I need to tell you what I learned from Jennifer Walsh's mother, Margaret said quietly. The high school girlfriend who died of organ failure. She sat heavily in the visitor's chair. Mrs. Walsh kept every piece of evidence from 1998, medical records, police reports, and something the investigators missed. Margaret pulled out a faded photograph. This was taken at Jennifer's funeral. Look in the background. Becca studied the image. Mourners gathered around a graveside, flowers and tears and grief. But in the distant background, barely visible, a figure stood apart from the crowd. David, 17 years old and watching Jennifer Walsh's burial with what looked like satisfaction. He attended his victim's funeral, Grace said grimly. That's textbook serial killer behavior. Mrs. Walsh said David approached her afterward, offered his condolences, said Jennifer's death was tragic, but maybe it was God's way of preventing her from making bad choices. The casual cruelty of teenage David chilled everyone in the room. What bad choices? Becca asked. Jennifer had been accepted to Stanford University on a full scholarship. She was planning to break up with David before graduation and move to California. Another pattern, another woman whose independence had threatened David's control. Sarah pulled up more security footage on her laptop. Look at this. Morrison Pharmaceuticals. 2 weeks before the poisoning started. The video showed David and Vanessa in the company parking lot at midnight. David was carrying a large bag. Vanessa had a small cooler. They were preparing for weeks. This wasn't crime of passion. This was premeditated murder. The baby kicked hard against Becca's ribs, as if her daughter was responding to the mounting evidence against her father. Dr. Hendricks entered for her afternoon check. How are we feeling today? Angry but determined. Good. Anger can be productive when it's focused on justice rather than revenge. Dr. Hendricks listened to the baby's heartbeat, strong and steady. She's measuring perfectly. 34 weeks and thriving despite everything she's been through. When will she be safe to deliver? 37 weeks is considered full term. 3 more weeks if we can manage it. But honestly, she could arrive tomorrow and be fine. The baby rolled and settled, as if she'd been listening to the conversation. I know the difference between passion and premeditation. This was murder, not madness. The words came out with quiet certainty. Becca wasn't just angry anymore. She was clear, focused, determined. Prosecutor Walsh returned that afternoon with news that would change everything. Mrs. Matthews, I've been in contact with prosecutors from 3 other states. They want to charge David with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. How many victims total? 7 women over 18 years. If we can connect all the cases, David Matthews becomes one of the most prolific serial killers in recent history. The scope was breathtaking. David hadn't just betrayed Becca personally. He'd been systematically murdering women for nearly 2 decades. What does this mean for the plea deal? It means we withdraw the offer. With this much evidence, David Matthews is looking at multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. Grace leaned forward. What about Vanessa Sterling? She's agreed to testify against David in all 7 cases. In exchange, she gets 15 years with possibility of parole in 10. That's still a light sentence for attempted murder, Margaret observed. But it guarantees we can put David away forever. The baby's movements became more active as the discussion continued, rolling and stretching and kicking as if she approved of the direction things were taking. Mrs. Matthews, Prosecutor Walsh said carefully, are you prepared to be the key witness in what will likely become a national trial? The media attention will be intense. Becca looked around the room at the women who'd become her support system. Sarah, who'd documented every lie. Grace, who'd risked everything to protect them. Margaret, who'd chosen justice over family loyalty. Dr. Hendricks, who'd fought to save them both. Yes, I'm ready. The defense will attack your credibility. They'll claim you're a bitter wife seeking revenge. Then they'll discover I'm actually a surviving victim seeking justice. There's a difference. The baby kicked directly under her hand as if sealing the promise. The trial will likely last months. You'll need to relive the poisoning attempts in excruciating detail. Then that's what I'll do. David's family may turn against you, his business partners, people who don't want to believe he's capable of serial murder. I can't control what other people believe. I can only tell the truth. Margaret squeezed her daughter-in-law's hand. You won't be alone. I'll be there for every day of testimony. So will I, Sarah added. And me, Grace confirmed. All of us, Dr. Hendricks said firmly. Prosecutor Walsh smiled. Mrs. Matthews, you realize what you're taking on. This will be one of the most high-profile serial killer trials in years. I realize I'm the mother of David's intended victim. My daughter deserves to grow up in a world where attempted murder has real consequences. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if her daughter was cheering for her mother's courage. That evening, alone in her hospital room, Becca made a decision that surprised her with its clarity. She called the head of pediatrics. Dr. Patterson, this is Rebecca Matthews in room 407. I want to start a foundation. What kind of foundation, Mrs. Nut Matthews? For women who've survived intimate partner violence, specifically poisoning attempts. I want to use my case to raise awareness and provide resources. That's a wonderful idea. What would you need from us? Medical expertise, research support, help identifying other victims who may not have realized they were being poisoned? You'll have it. After she hung up, Becca pressed her hands to her belly and spoke to her daughter. You're going to grow up knowing that your mother didn't just survive evil. She fought back against it. She made the world a little bit safer for other women. The baby rolled and settled into peaceful sleep. You're fighting too, aren't you? Little one. Every kick is you telling the world that we refuse to be victims. Through her window, Becca could see stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Each point of light seemed like a promise, a reminder that even the darkest nights eventually gave way to dawn. 3 more weeks until her daughter arrived. 3 more weeks of preparation and planning and building the case that would ensure David Matthews never harmed another woman. The baby kicked once more, gently, as if saying goodnight. Sleep well, sweetheart. Tomorrow we continue fighting for justice. And for the first time in months, Becca felt genuinely peaceful. Not because the danger was over, but because she finally knew exactly who she was meant to be. A survivor, a fighter, a mother who would do anything to protect her child. The woman David Matthews had tried to destroy was gone forever. In her place was someone infinitely stronger. The trial of David Matthews began on a cold January morning. Becca was 38 weeks pregnant, her belly enormous, but her determination unwavering. Dr. Hendricks had cleared her for limited court appearances with strict medical supervision. Mrs. Matthews, Prosecutor Walsh said as they approached the courthouse steps, "Are you ready?" Media vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. The case had become a national obsession. Serial killer, real estate developer faces. 7 murder charges, pharmaceutical rep. Turn state's evidence against former lover. Pregnant victim takes stand against attempted murderer. "I'm ready," Becca said firmly. She walked up those courthouse steps flanked by the women who'd become her chosen family. Grace on her right, weapon concealed but visible. Margaret on her left, carrying legal documents and fierce maternal protectiveness. Sarah behind them, documenting everything for the foundation they were building. Inside the courtroom, David sat at the defense table looking nothing like the charming man she'd married. Prison had aged him. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by ill-fitting clothes provided by the state. His confident smile had been replaced by desperate anxiety. When their eyes met, Becca felt nothing. No love, no hate, no fear. Just calm certainty that justice was finally arriving. Vanessa Sterling entered under heavy guard to begin her testimony. The woman who'd tried to murder Becca's baby had agreed to reveal everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. "State your name for the record." Vanessa Sterling, age 28, pharmaceutical sales representative for Morrison Pharmaceuticals. "Ms. Sterling, do you know the defendant, David Matthews?" "Yes, we had an intimate relationship for approximately 10 months. "Did Mr. Matthews ask you to harm his wife, Rebecca Matthews?" Vanessa's voice was steady, clinical. "Yes. David wanted Rebecca eliminated so he could collect life insurance money and disappear with me to South America." The defense attorney objected. Leading the witness. "Sustained," Prosecutor Walsh rephrased. "Ms. Sterling, please describe your first conversation with David Matthews about his wife." "David told me Rebecca was ruining his life, that she'd trapped him with pregnancy and was preventing him from being happy. He said he wished there was a way to make her disappear without suspicion." "What did you understand that to mean?" "At first, I thought he meant divorce, but David explained that Rebecca would take half his assets in divorce court. He needed a permanent solution." "Permanent solution." "He wanted her dead." The courtroom erupted. Judge Catherine Walsh banged her gavel for order. Becca felt the baby kick hard against her ribs. As if her daughter was responding to hearing the truth about her father's intentions, Vanessa continued her testimony with devastating precision. She detailed the planning meetings, the research into pregnancy-terminating herbs, the gradual poisoning schedule designed to mimic pregnancy complications. David provided Rebecca's daily routine, what time she drank tea, how much she consumed, when she was most vulnerable to poisoning. "Did Mr. Matthews help you obtain the herbs used in the poisoning?" "Yes, David used his connections in the pharmaceutical industry to access controlled substances. He researched proper dosages to cause miscarriage without immediate suspicion." "How often did you poison Mrs. Matthews?" 12 times over 6 weeks. David calculated the schedule to ensure Rebecca would lose the baby during what appeared to be natural pregnancy complications. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Becca pressed her hand to her belly and whispered, "You're safe now, sweetheart. The bad people can't hurt us anymore." David's defense attorney began cross-examination with obvious desperation. Ms. Sterling, isn't it true that you were obsessively jealous of Mrs. Matthews? Yes. And isn't it true that you initiated the plan to harm her out of romantic jealousy? No. David initiated the plan for financial gain. But you admit you were willing to commit murder for love. I was willing to commit murder because David convinced me it was necessary for our future together. So you're claiming David coerced you into attempted murder? Vanessa's expression hardened. David didn't coerce me. He recruited me. There's a difference. The defense attorney presented text messages between David and Vanessa, trying to show that she was the driving force behind the poisoning plot. But Prosecutor Walsh was ready with devastating rebuttal evidence. Ms. Sterling, I'm showing you Defense Exhibit 17, a text message where you wrote, "I can't stand watching you pretend to love her." Did you write that? Yes. And Mr. Matthews' response was, "Soon, baby? The life insurance policy is almost in place. Then we can proceed with the final solution." Did he write that? Yes. What did you understand final solution to mean? Murder. The defense attorney tried desperately to paint David as a weak man manipulated by a dangerous woman, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing David and Vanessa opened joint accounts months before the poisoning began, security footage showing them stealing controlled substances together, text messages revealing David's active participation in planning Rebecca's death. Most damaging of all, David's own journal entries describing his previous victims. Jennifer was getting too independent. College would have ruined everything. The pennyroyal worked perfectly, looked like natural heart failure. Emily suspected something about the business deal, had to silence her before she talked to the wrong people. The ricin was almost undetectable. Lisa's opposition to the medical complex threatened our profits. Digitalis and her morning coffee solved the problem permanently. Each entry was a confession to murder, written in David's own handwriting, discovered in a safety deposit box he shared with Vanessa. The jury listened in horrified silence as Prosecutor Walsh read David's clinical descriptions of killing 7 women over 18 years. Rebecca's pregnancy makes the timing perfect. Late-term miscarriage will look tragic but natural. The $2 million policy will fund our new life in Argentina. Becca felt the baby move restlessly inside her belly. Her daughter seemed agitated by the terrible truths being revealed about her father. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "He can never hurt us now." When David took the stand in his own defense, his carefully rehearsed performance fell apart under cross-examination. "Mr. Matthews, you increased your wife's life insurance policy to $2 million. Why? We needed more coverage with the baby coming. $2 million for a marketing executive with no health problems? Isn't that excessive? I wanted to be prepared for any possibility, including the possibility of collecting insurance money after your wife's death." David's composure cracked. "That's not what I meant. Mr. Matthews, I'm showing you your text message to Vanessa Sterling dated December 8th. You wrote, 'The policy is active. We can proceed whenever you're ready.' What did that mean?" "I was talking about business insurance. Business insurance on your wife's life." "No, I meant." Prosecutor Walsh pressed relentlessly. "Mr. Matthews, did you or did you not provide Vanessa Sterling with detailed information about your wife's daily routines?" "I may have mentioned her schedule in casual conversation." "Casual conversation about when she was most vulnerable to poisoning. I never said anything about poisoning." "Then why did you research pregnancy-terminating herbs on your computer?" "I was trying to understand what Vanessa was planning so I could stop her. By helping her access controlled substances, I didn't help her with anything." Prosecutor Walsh presented computer records showing David had researched pennyroyal dosages, miscarriage symptoms, and life insurance claim procedures. "Mr. Matthews, if you were trying to stop Vanessa, why didn't you contact police?" "I was afraid she would hurt Rebecca out of spite. So instead you helped her poison your pregnant wife." "I never helped her poison anyone." But David's own words condemned him. Text messages, journal entries, computer searches, bank records. The evidence painted a picture of a serial killer who'd been perfecting his technique for decades. The jury deliberated for exactly 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. 7 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. Judge Walsh sentenced David Matthews to 7 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. Mr. Matthews, the judge said, you have shown a complete lack of remorse for destroying the lives of innocent women. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison, and the world will be safer for your absence. As they led David away in shackles, he looked back at Becca one final time. She met his gaze steadily, feeling nothing but relief that her daughter would grow up in a world where her father could never hurt anyone again. I faced pure evil and didn't let it break me. That's strength I never knew I had. The baby kicked gently, as if approving of her mother's courage. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded Becca as she walked slowly down the steps. Mrs. Matthews, how do you feel about the verdict? I feel grateful that justice was served, not just for me and my daughter, but for all of David's victims. What's next for you? I'm starting a foundation to help other women who've survived intimate partner poisoning. We're going to make sure no one else has to face this nightmare alone. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. And I'm going to be a mother, the best mother I can possibly be. As they walked away from the courthouse, Grace fell into step beside her. How do you feel? Free, Becca said simply. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. The baby rolled and settled, as if she too was ready to begin their new life. Justice had been served, truth had prevailed, and tomorrow would be the first day of a future built on courage instead of fear. 3 weeks after the verdict, Becca gave birth to a healthy daughter, Emma Grace Matthews. The delivery room was filled with the women who'd become her chosen family. Margaret held her right hand. Sarah documented everything with tearful joy. Grace stood guard at the door. Weapon concealed but present, Dr. Hendricks guided Emma safely into the world. She's perfect, Dr. Hendricks announced as Emma's first cry filled the room. 7 pounds, 6 ounces, 20 inches long, completely healthy despite everything she's been through. Becca counted Emma's fingers and toes through tears of relief and joy. The universal new mother ritual felt sacred after their survival. 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes. A daughter who'd fought poison in the womb and emerged victorious. Hello, sweetheart, she whispered. We made it. We're both here, and we're both safe. Emma's eyes opened, dark blue like all newborns, but alert and aware. She seemed to study her mother's face with serious concentration. She knows you, Margaret said softly. Look how calm she is in your arms. Of course she knows me. We've been fighting together for months. The baby's grip on Becca's finger was surprisingly strong, like a promise that they would face whatever came next as a team. David's business assets were seized by the courts to pay restitution to his victims' families. The house Becca had shared with him was sold. She used the proceeds to start the Emma Grace Foundation, dedicated to supporting women who'd survived intimate partner poisoning. Grace left police work to become the foundation's security consultant and Becca's closest friend. Some cases change you, Grace said as they worked together in the foundation's offices. This one changed me for the better. How I learned that protecting someone isn't just about stopping the immediate threat. It's about helping them build a life so strong that evil can't destroy it. The foundation grew rapidly. Media attention from the trial had raised awareness about intimate partner poisoning as a form of domestic violence. Women from across the country contacted them with similar stories. 12 cases in the first month, Sarah reported during a board meeting, all involving gradual poisoning designed to look like natural illness. What kind of support are they requesting? Medical testing to confirm poisoning, legal assistance for prosecution, counseling for trauma recovery, and safe housing during legal proceedings? Becca looked at Emma sleeping peacefully in her carrier. Her daughter was 3 months old now, healthy and alert and completely unaware that she'd survived attempted murder before birth. We'll help all of them, she decided. Every woman who reaches out gets support. Margaret had become an unexpected ally in running the foundation. David's mother threw herself into the work with fierce dedication. I failed to raise a decent son, she said during one of their planning sessions, but I can help raise strong granddaughter and support other mothers doing the same. The foundation's first major success came when they helped identify a pattern of suspicious deaths in Oregon. 5 women had died of apparent natural causes over 3 years. All had been involved with the same man. The medical examiner ordered new toxicology tests based on our protocols, Grace reported. They found evidence of systematic poisoning in all 5 cases. Is he being charged, arrested yesterday? 5 counts of first-degree murder. Emma stirred in her sleep as if responding to news of justice being served. 6 months after the trial, Becca moved into a bright yellow house with a nursery that overlooked a garden. Everything was new, clean, free from the shadows of her previous life. The prenatal tea tin sat on her desk in the foundation offices. Not as a reminder of trauma, but as a symbol of survival. They'd transformed the weapon intended to kill them into a tool for helping other women. Sometimes the things that nearly destroy us show us exactly how strong we really are. She spoke these words at the Foundation's first annual fundraising gala. 500 people had come to support their work. Survivors, supporters, law enforcement officials, and medical professionals united in preventing intimate partner poisoning. Emma sat in the front row with her grandmother Margaret, clapping her tiny hands at appropriate moments as if she understood the importance of the evening. My daughter was targeted for murder before she was born, Becca continued. Someone tried to poison us both through prenatal tea designed to help my pregnancy. But evil made a mistake. It underestimated the power of women supporting each other. The audience rose in standing ovation. Through the applause, Becca could hear Emma's delighted baby laughter. Dr. Hendricks approached the podium as the evening's keynote speaker. The Emma Grace Foundation has revolutionized how we identify and treat intimate partner poisoning, she said. In 1 year, they've helped solve 37 cases across 20 states, 37 women who might have died if this foundation didn't exist. After the gala, Becca sat in Emma's nursery feeding her daughter and reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. You know what I realized tonight, she said softly. I thought surviving meant getting through each day. But real surviving means building a life so strong that what tried to destroy you becomes your purpose. Emma's eyes were wide and attentive, as if she was absorbing every word. Your father tried to kill us for money, but we turned that into something that saves other women's lives. That's not just survival, sweetheart. That's victory. Emma reached up and touched her mother's face with tiny, perfect fingers. You're going to grow up knowing that your mother didn't just survive evil. She built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. The final scene took place on a spring morning when Emma was 9 months old. Becca sat in her kitchen making chamomile tea while her daughter played on a blanket nearby. The ritual had been transformed. The same time of day, the same careful preparation, but now the tea represented healing instead of harm, safety instead of danger, hope instead of fear. Emma babbled happily, reaching for sunbeams streaming through the window. Yes, little one, Becca said with a smile. It's a beautiful day, and tomorrow will be even better. She raised her teacup in a quiet toast. To women who refuse to be victims, to babies who fight back from the womb, to justice served and futures reclaimed. Emma clapped her hands as if she understood and approved. And to you, my brave daughter, you survived attempted murder and chose to thrive instead. You're going to change the world. Through the kitchen window, Becca could see Grace arriving for their weekly foundation planning meeting. Margaret's car was pulling into the driveway with groceries and grandmother's devotion. Sarah was walking up the path carrying files and fierce friendship. Emma reached for her mother, and Becca lifted her daughter into her arms. We did it, sweetheart. We survived everything evil could throw at us. We built a family from the women who fought beside us. We created purpose from pain. Emma smiled her toothless baby smile and made a sound that might have been, Mama. Yes, Becca said firmly. I'm your mama, and you're my miracle. Together, we're unstoppable. Outside, spring flowers bloomed in the garden. Inside, a mother and daughter who'd survived attempted murder were planning their next foundation project to save other women's lives. The prenatal tea had been meant to end their story. Instead, it had become the beginning of their greatest chapter. Emma Grace Matthews would grow up knowing that she was loved, protected, and surrounded by the strongest force in the universe, women who refused to let evil win. And that was the greatest victory of all. If this story of survival and justice resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other women find Rebecca's incredible journey. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that they can survive betrayal and build something beautiful from the ashes. Drop a comment below telling me what part of Rebecca's transformation inspired you most. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because every week I bring you real stories of women who refuse to let evil win. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Until next time, remember you are stronger than you know.